We go testing and everybody sees us pounding round and round, and they don't necessarily know or understand why we go testing or what we're actually doing when we're testing. It's hugely important. That's why you see all the touring car teams going out pre-season. So basically, pre-season you're unrestricted. So once the last race is finished and 7 days before the first race meeting, you can do whatever testing you like. During this season, we're then restricted to 4 tests per car, per driver. You're not allowed to test at a circuit that you're yet to go to. As a general overview, we turn up 7:30 in the morning, get everything ready. We set up the flat patch. So the flat patch is a tool that we use that if ever we make a change to the car, we sit it on the flat patch. It's a perfectly flat area, and it means that any change that we do, we can reference back to a zero data point. So the NGTC car, the British Touring car, is quite a complex bit of kit in that it has so many different items that you can change. So first of all, on the suspension side of things, you have what we call geometry. So the geometry options are quite vast. You can change the angles of the wishbones, you can change the position that the upright, which is effectively the bit that carries the wheel, bolts onto. And there's so many different versions, but to explain some of them, you have different roll centres. So you can change the centre at which the car rolls around itself. So when you load up the car, it can roll more or less. You then have different spring rates. You then have different damper builds. Damper builds, there's probably a million different versions of damper build. And then that, in conjunction with the spring rate, can be changed, developed and pushed in various areas. Then that twins to an anti-roll bar, and the anti-roll bar, that we have 2 different options of anti-roll bar, front and rear. We turn up with 3 pretty similar cars, slightly tuned to each driver's characteristic. Some drivers like a safer rear end, so they want more grip on the rear. Some want it to be twitchy on the rear but pointy on the front. So some like the car to move, so more compliance under braking, so softer. And what we've done in particular recently, because the car is brand new to us, we've gone about doing a system where we call it a sweep. You go through a sweep of different items on the car. So you want to know, because the car's different to last year's car. Last year's car was an evolution as we went from 2012 right the way up to last year. Every year was an evolution, every race meeting could be an evolution. And so when we go testing now with the new car, we're trying to learn exactly what each change does, kind of in comparison with the old car, but now it's more about just making the new car work, working out what this new chassis wants, how it reacts. So we don't generally chase a lap time. I think a lot of people think that we go out and we drive around until we get faster and faster, and then we put it in the truck once we've hit a magic lap time. It's not like that at all. We go out and we tend to see in minute detail on the data where the improvement is. So for example, you might make a change. Let's say you've changed the spring rate. You change the spring, you go out and the driver comes back and says it feels much better, you might go 0.3 a lap quicker, but you now want to find out why it went quicker, what areas of the track it went quicker in. Was it faster in the high speed corners? Was it faster in the low speed corners? Where I say we don't search for a lap time, obviously in an ultimate end of the day, you put everything that you've learned and you try to finalise where you're at, what your best setup of the day is, if you like. That will be the time, if you do that, if you get to that point, that will be the time that you do look at the lap time specifically. The last test we did, we had sessions. You go out in the first session, and normally in between tests or in between race meetings, we take so much of the car apart and put it back together again. Sometimes you might be running a new engine or a different gearbox, or you might have had your exhaust system apart, you've re-shimmed the clutch. So what we first do is an installation lap. We just make sure that everything's gone back together right, that nothing's broken, nothing's cracked, nothing's untoward, nothing's as it shouldn't be. 99 times out of 100, you go out and do your install laps, you give it a check and it's absolutely fine, and then you go out and do your runs. The first run we'll do the car will be on normally a used set of tyres. We'll go out on what we call a diagonal, where the left front tyre is on the right rear and the right rear is on the left front, vice versa. And what we do that for is we go out, we'll do 2 or 3 laps. We warm what the tyres on the front warm up quicker than the tyres on the rear. So you warm the rear tyres up on the front, and you come in, you swap them around, and off you go. You go and do a baseline run, maybe 3, 4, 5 laps, depending on how long the lap is. The driver will then report back what the general balance of the car's like, what the level of grip's like, what he likes or dislikes compared to last time he drove it. And then you start your work program from there. Often the best way to do it is always with new tyres. That's also the most expensive way of doing it, because every set of new tyres is about £1,000, and you can't just chuck £1,000 worth of tyres on every time you make a change. So you have to baseline and reference back to a starting point, and try not to get lost in that respect. We've got a Snetterton test in July. We'll be taking all 3 cars there. That, because we won't be racing there until quite late in the year, and we're not racing there till October, the chances are the track conditions will be vastly different. So we won't be setting the car up there to go fast round Snetterton per se. We'll be setting the car, we'll be working on the test program there to make sure the car improves with changes. We'll find out what makes the car tick, and to a certain extent we'll be working on things that make the car work everywhere, not specifically at Snetterton.